I am Lou, 32 years old, living in Boston today. But for years my family branded me as the failure. The irony, while they mocked my career choices and life decisions, I was secretly keeping their electricity on and their mortgage paid. For 6 years, I lived this strange double life. Now the moment of truth is approaching, and I feel both dread and anticipation watching their carefully constructed narrative about to collapse. Before I dive into how I became my parents' secret benefactor while they belittled me at every family gathering, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. This story of family betrayal and unexpected redemption might help someone in your circle. I grew up in a tidy suburb outside Chicago, the middle child in what appeared to be the perfect American family. Our two-story colonial house, with its pristine lawn, stood as a monument to conventional success. My father, Richard, worked as a financial advisor at Meridian Wealth Partners, a prestigious firm where he managed portfolios for upper-middle-class clients. He wore tailored suits, carried a leather briefcase, and spoke with an authority that commanded respect. Everyone in our community sought his financial wisdom, and he dispensed it with calculated confidence. My mother, Margaret, balanced her career as an administrator at the local high school with community involvement that bordered on obsession. She served on the PTA board, organized charity fundraisers, and maintained impeccable social connections. With her perfect bob haircut and coordinated outfits, she embodied suburban respectability. Together, my parents created an image that our neighbors envied and aspired to replicate. Then there were us kids. My older brother Thomas was 5 years my senior and embodied everything my parents valued. He aced every subject without apparent effort, captained both the debate team and basketball team, and maintained the kind of social ease that made him universally liked. Thomas seemed born understanding the unwritten rules of success. My younger sister Amanda, 3 years behind me, possessed artistic talents that dazzled everyone. Her paintings won regional competitions by age 12, and her natural charm made her the darling of our community. People regularly told my parents how lucky they were to have such gifted children. And then there was me sandwiched between these two paragons. From early on, I processed information differently. Where Thomas thrived in structured learning environments, I questioned everything and sought connections between seemingly unrelated topics. While my siblings absorbed information through traditional methods, I needed to take things apart physically or conceptually to understand them. My second-grade teacher first voiced concerns when I struggled with memorizing multiplication tables but could intuitively solve complex word problems. My parents responded by scheduling extra tutoring rather than exploring different learning approaches. This established a pattern. Instead of recognizing my different cognitive style, they treated me as deficient. The comparisons became a constant soundtrack to my childhood. At dinner, my father would announce Thomas's latest academic achievement, then turn to me with that familiar look of disappointment. My mother's phrases burned into my memory. "Why can't you be more like your brother? Amanda is 3 years younger and already reading above your level." By middle school, the family dynamic was firmly established. Thomas received genuine praise. Amanda got encouragement, and I received correction. Family photos from that era tell the story. Thomas standing tall, with our father's proud hand on his shoulder. Amanda nestled against our mother and me, slightly apart with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The summer before high school, I discovered computers. Not just using them like my peers, but understanding their architecture, programming, and potential. I spent weeks in our basement taking apart and rebuilding an old desktop my father had discarded. When I showed him how I had improved its performance, he glanced at it briefly and said, "You wasted all that time just to fix an outdated machine." High school brought academic challenges despite my efforts. I stayed up studying while Thomas seemed to absorb information effortlessly. My grades remained stubbornly average in traditional subjects, though I excelled in computer science and entrepreneurship electives. These successes were dismissed as hobby courses by my parents. The defining moment came during my junior year when our guidance counselor met with my parents. I sat silently as she explained that my test scores showed unusual patterns. While average overall, I demonstrated exceptional aptitude for systems thinking and technological innovation. She suggested focusing on these strengths rather than remediating perceived weaknesses. My father interrupted her. We need him to improve across the board. Thomas is at the top of his class at Princeton now, and we expect the same level of achievement." The counselor tried again. "Lou shows remarkable entrepreneurial thinking. His project analyzing business models demonstrates insight beyond most adults." My mother smiled tightly. "We appreciate your interest, but we know our son. He just needs to apply himself." Senior year arrived with the college application process. Thomas had attended Princeton, and Amanda was headed to Rhode Island School of Design on scholarship. My parents assumed I would follow a similar path, despite my consistently average grades in traditional subjects. When my SAT scores came back strong in math, but average in verbal, my father shook his head. "We will have to pay for extra tutoring to get these up before you retest." I made my decision after researching alternatives. At dinner one night, I announced my plan to attend Lakeside Community College while working part-time at a local tech repair shop. The silence was deafening. My father put down his fork, his face flushing red. Community college. No child of mine is settling for community college. But their computer science program is actually excellent, and I can transfer to a 4-year school later, I explained. My mother dabbed her lips with a napkin. "What will we tell everyone? They will think something is wrong with you." "Nothing is wrong with me," I countered. "This is the smart financial and educational choice for what I want to do." Thomas smirked. "Mom and Dad just want what is best for you. Maybe you should listen to them for once." Amanda looked uncomfortable, but stayed silent, her 13-year-old self already understanding the family hierarchy. That night solidified my position as the family disappointment. I overheard my father on the phone with his brother. 2 brilliant children, and one we just do not know what to do with. "Some kids just lack ambition, I suppose." The comment stung, but it also hardened my resolve. If my parents could not see value in my different path, I would need to find validation elsewhere. Despite their opposition, I enrolled at Lakeside Community College the following fall, taking my first steps toward a future none of us could have imagined. Community college proved to be exactly what I needed, though my parents never acknowledged it. While living at home to save money, I took a full course load and worked 20 hours weekly at Computer Universe, a local repair shop. My routine became predictable. Classes during the day, work in the evenings, and studying late into the night. When I brought home my first semester, grades straight. As in technical courses, my mother merely nodded. "That is nice, but of course community college classes are easier." Thomas had to write 3 papers his first week at Princeton. Such comparisons dominated our interactions. Every Sunday dinner included updates on Thomas completing his master's in economics or Amanda winning another art competition. My achievements at Lakeside remained footnotes to the family narrative. The turning point in my education came during my second semester, when I enrolled in Professor Jenkins's Introduction to Business Technology class. Unlike my other instructors, Jenkins had worked in Silicon Valley for 15 years before returning to teach. He immediately recognized something in me that my family had missed. After my presentation analyzing emerging mobile technology trends, he asked me to stay after class. "Lou, do you realize you just predicted market movements that most industry veterans miss? You have a gift for seeing where technology and consumer behavior intersect." His words struck me with physical force. For the first time, someone with relevant expertise valued my perspective. Over the next year, Professor Jenkins became my mentor, guiding my coursework and encouraging my entrepreneurial instincts. Meanwhile, I expanded my tech repair business from my dorm room. What started as fixing classmates' laptops evolved into network troubleshooting for local businesses. My parents viewed this as a distraction from real studies. When I explained that I was earning over $500 weekly while gaining practical experience, my father dismissed it as just glorified technical support. I graduated with an associate's degree in computer science, maintaining a perfect GPA despite my work commitments. The ceremony was small compared to Thomas's Princeton graduation, which had warranted a weekend celebration with extended family. For mine, my parents arrived late and left immediately after citing another engagement. That summer, I made my decision. A Boston-based startup called TechNexus had offered me an entry-level position after seeing a mobile app I had developed. The salary was modest, but the opportunity to learn from innovative minds outweighed financial considerations. When I announced my plans to move, my father exploded. "Boston. For some job at a company nobody has heard of, this is exactly your problem, Lou. No ambition, no strategic thinking. They will probably be bankrupt within 6 months, my mother added. Thomas, visiting for the weekend, offered his unsolicited assessment. Starting salaries at actual tech companies are 3 times what they are offering you. You are selling yourself short as usual. Despite their opposition, I packed my Honda Civic and drove to Boston the following week. My tiny apartment in Somerville measured barely 500 square feet with a fold-out couch serving as my bed. The rent consumed nearly half my monthly salary, but being free from constant judgment felt worth every penny. My early months at TechNexus tested my resolve. The hours were brutal, the pressure intense, and the learning curve vertical. As the newest hire, I handled everything from coding to office maintenance. Some nights I slept under my desk, rather than waste time commuting. My parents interpreted my sparse communications as evidence of failure. The worst moment came that first Christmas when I returned home. The family gathered in our living room, cocktails in hand, as Thomas announced his promotion at Goldman Sachs. Everyone applauded. Amanda shared news about her gallery showing. More applause. When attention reluctantly turned to me, I began explaining TechNexus's innovative approach to data security. My father interrupted. So basically, you are the IT guy. Have you thought about getting a real job with an established company? I could make some calls. The room erupted in laughter led by Thomas. Even Amanda smiled apologetically. I sat there, humiliation burning my cheeks, as my professional life became the family joke. That night, I decided to limit my visits home and focus entirely on building my career. Though I did not cut ties completely, I reduced calls to monthly check-ins and visits to major holidays only. My parents noticed, but attributed my distance to embarrassment over my poor career choices. The following spring brought a dark period. Exhaustion from 70-hour work weeks combined with family rejection pushed me into depression. I questioned my path, wondering if perhaps they were right. Maybe I lacked the talent and drive necessary for real success. One rainy Tuesday, our CEO Ryan called me into his office. I expected criticism for a delayed project. Instead, he closed the door and sat across from me. Lou, I have been watching your work. Your insight into how our security protocol could integrate with consumer behavior patterns is revolutionary. I want you on the core development team. This unexpected validation became my turning point. If someone as successful as Ryan saw value in my thinking, perhaps I was not the failure my family believed. I threw myself into the new role with renewed determination, sensing that TechNexus might be on the verge of something transformative. The next 18 months transformed both TechNexus and my career trajectory. Our core team developed Data Shield, a revolutionary app that integrated multiple security functions with unprecedented user simplicity. As product manager, I bridged the gap between our technical capabilities and market needs, a role that leveraged my unique perspective. The venture capital community took notice. When 3 major firms competed to lead our Series B funding round, I found myself in boardrooms, presenting our vision to industry titans. After one particularly successful presentation, Marcos Velez, from Sequoia Capital, approached me privately. Your analysis of market positioning was exceptional, Lou. Most technical people cannot articulate business strategy that clearly. How long have you been doing this? I was 24 years old, but had spent years analyzing business models as a hobby. The validation from someone of Marcus's stature further confirmed I had found my professional home. My promotion to Director of Product Strategy came with stock options, representing 2% of the company. At the time, this seemed more symbolic than valuable, but I appreciated the recognition. My salary doubled, though it remained modest by Boston standards. Still, I moved to a slightly larger apartment and began saving aggressively. The company's growth accelerated beyond our projections. Our user base reached 1 million within 6 months, then 5 million 3 months later. Major tech publications featured our innovative approach, and competitors scrambled to replicate our model. Through it all, I maintained a deliberate, low-profile, declining interview requests and staying off the company website. This was partly natural introversion, but also strategic. I sensed that something remarkable was happening and wanted to process it privately. One evening after our weekly strategy meeting, our CEO pulled me aside. Tech Solutions Corporation has made an acquisition offer, $800 million. The board is considering it. The number stunned me. While I knew we were valuable, this valuation exceeded my wildest expectations. If the deal went through, my 2% stake would be worth $16 million. The possibility seemed surreal. For 2 weeks, negotiations consumed the leadership team. When the final deal closed at $900 million, our small office erupted in celebration. At 25, I had become a multimillionaire. The wire transfer confirmation appeared in my bank account on a Tuesday afternoon as I sat eating a peanut butter sandwich at my desk. Despite this life-changing event, I maintained my modest lifestyle. I moved to a comfortable but unassuming condo in Cambridge, invested most of my windfall with careful diversification, and continued working at Tech Solutions Corporation in an expanded leadership role. The only luxury I permitted was financial security itself, the knowledge that I would never need to worry about money again. Throughout this period, my relationship with my family remained strained and distant. Monthly calls home followed a predictable pattern. My mother would detail Thomas's latest achievement or Amanda's artistic recognition, then perfunctorily ask about my work before changing the subject. I offered vague updates about doing well at the same company, neither lying nor revealing my extraordinary circumstances. The truth about my parents' financial situation came unexpectedly during a rare phone call with Amanda. Now, in her final year at RISD, she had matured into a thoughtful young woman, less bound by family mythology. "Lou, I do not know if anyone has told you, but Mom and Dad are having serious money problems," she confided. "Dad lost some major clients after making bad investment recommendations. They might lose the house." The revelation hit me with surprising force. Dad financial troubles. He was supposed to be the expert, the one who always made the right decisions. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Really bad. They had to remortgage the house last year, and now they are falling behind on payments. Dad is too proud to tell anyone. Mom has been selling her jewelry quietly. They think I do not know, but I overheard them arguing." My first reaction mixed vindication with anger. After years of criticizing my choices, my father's superior financial acumen had failed him. Part of me wanted to let them face the consequences to experience the struggle they assumed I was enduring. But deeper reflection brought different emotions. Despite everything, they were still my parents. The thought of them losing their home, facing public humiliation in the community where they had built their identity, troubled me more than expected. Family relationships are rarely simple equations of merit and desert. For several days I considered my options. I could reveal my success and offer direct help, but this would humiliate my father and fundamentally alter our family dynamic. I could do nothing, letting nature take its course. Or I could find a middle path. After consulting with my financial advisor and attorney, I established an anonymous trust designed to support my parents without revealing my involvement. The mechanism was elegant in its simplicity. The trust would pay their mortgage directly to the bank and cover essential utilities appearing to come from an investment my father had made years earlier that had finally matured. When the first mortgage payment arrived mysteriously at their bank, my father launched an investigation to identify the source. During our next call, he mentioned the strange occurrence with a mixture of confusion and relief. "Some investment seems to have paid off, though I cannot recall making it," he said. "The timing could not have been better. The market has been challenging lately." I murmured appropriate surprise and congratulations, sensing his pride prevented full disclosure of their financial distress. Over the following months, the trust continued making payments, while I maintained my anonymous role as their financial savior. This arrangement created a surreal double life. While providing my parents' financial lifeline, I still endured their condescension during holidays and family gatherings. My father would lecture me about financial planning while unknowingly living on my support. My mother would suggest entry-level positions more suitable than my IT job while her electricity bill was paid from my trust. The psychological complexity of this situation was not lost on me. I was simultaneously powerful and powerless, in our relationship wealthy, beyond their imagination, yet still the family underachiever in their eyes. The contradiction sometimes struck me as absurdly funny, sometimes as profoundly sad. Managing visits home required careful performance. I drove my 5-year-old Honda rather than the Tesla I sometimes considered buying. I wore simple clothes that matched their expectations of my limited means. I created a shadow version of my life that aligned with their narrative while my actual circumstances diverged ever further from their perception. The deception extended to my Boston life as well. When my parents visited, I rented a modest apartment through a service, temporarily moving my belongings from my actual home. I maintained 2 distinct wardrobes and even 2 sets of friends, those who knew my true circumstances and those who interacted with my parents. The complexity sometimes exhausted me, but it also protected a delicate family equilibrium. As months stretched into years, I watched from my unusual vantage point as my parents gradually stabilized their financial situation. My father rebuilt his client base, though never to its former level. My mother took on additional responsibilities at school for extra income. They remained unaware that the mysterious investment continued providing the foundation of their financial security, covering their largest expenses month after month. 6 years passed in this strange arrangement. I advanced further in my career, eventually becoming Chief Strategy Officer at a major tech firm. My investment portfolio grew substantially. I purchased a beautiful brownstone in Beacon Hill, but maintained my deception during increasingly rare family visits. The emotional cost of this double life accumulated gradually, a burden I carried alone, until everything changed with a chance encounter that would ultimately shatter the elaborate fiction I had constructed. Maintaining my double life required meticulous attention to detail. I developed a system for managing my parents' perceptions that bordered on method acting. When visiting Chicago, I became Lou, the underachiever, the son who had settled for less. I drove rental cars that matched my supposed income level and wore clothes purchased specifically for these performances items, just nice enough to avoid concern, but modest enough to reinforce their narrative. My preparations extended beyond appearances. I maintained a separate phone with appropriate apps and browsing history. I created a mental inventory of anecdotes about workplace frustrations and modest ambitions that fed their expectations. Each visit home became an extended improvisation within carefully defined parameters. My real life in Boston contrasted sharply with this fabricated version. As Chief Strategy Officer at Vertex Technologies, I managed a team of 30 and helped shape the company's long-term vision. Industry insiders recognized my expertise in emerging tech trends, and I occasionally spoke at conferences, always declining video recording to maintain my low profile. My brownstone featured smart home technology. I had helped develop contemporary art I collected, with growing discernment, and a rooftop garden that became my sanctuary. Family gatherings became exercises in restraint. During one Thanksgiving dinner, my father held court about financial markets, while I silently corrected his outdated assertions in my mind. Thomas, now a senior manager at Goldman Sachs, nodded sagely while making eye contact with me that communicated clear condescension. "So Lou," my father turned to me after discussing Thomas's recent promotion, still fixing computers at that startup. I swallowed my irritation with practiced ease. "Actually, I have moved into a strategy role, but yes, same company." "Strategy?" Thomas smirked. "Like deciding which computers to fix first?" Everyone laughed except Amanda, who shot me a sympathetic glance. I forced a smile and changed the subject. These interactions occurred against the backdrop of my continued financial support. Through my attorney, I monitored their mortgage payments and utility bills, ensuring everything remained current. Occasionally, unexpected expenses arose, like when their roof needed replacement after a severe storm. The trust quietly covered these costs as well, maintaining the fiction of the mysterious investment that conveniently addressed their needs. My father frequently mentioned this financial windfall with growing mystification. "I still cannot trace exactly where this money is coming from," he confided during one visit. "All the paperwork leads to offshore accounts and blind trusts. I have tried to investigate, but the lawyers say everything is legitimate. Perhaps you should just be grateful," I suggested mildly. He shook his head. "It just does not make sense. I keep thinking I must have made some brilliant investment and forgotten about it." He laughed without humor. "Your mother has started lighting candles at church, convinced it is divine intervention." The irony of their reliance on my support while continuing to dismiss my capabilities created a psychological dissonance I struggled to reconcile. Some nights alone in my Boston home, I questioned the wisdom of my elaborate deception. Was I protecting them or myself? Was this arrangement healthy for any of us? Professional success provided some counterbalance to family tension. My reputation in tech circles grew steadily, creating a community where I was valued for my actual contributions. I formed genuine friendships with colleagues who knew my true circumstances and provided the authentic recognition my family withheld. The complexity of my double life increased when I met Sarah at an industry conference in San Francisco. As marketing director for a major tech publication, she possessed both sharp intelligence and emotional perceptiveness. Our connection was immediate and profound, developing quickly from professional respect to personal attraction. 2 months into our relationship, Sarah began asking questions about my family. While I had shared some details, I had avoided explaining the full bizarre arrangement. How do you tell someone you are secretly supporting parents who think you are a failure? I need to meet your family, she said one evening, as we sat on my rooftop garden overlooking the Boston skyline. You have met my parents twice, but you always have excuses about yours. The prospect of introducing Sarah to my family triggered anxiety. She knew me as Lou, the respected industry leader, not Lou, the family disappointment. The collision of these separate worlds threatened the careful boundaries I had established. After weeks of procrastination, I finally agreed to a weekend visit to Chicago, preparing Sarah with sanitized versions of family dynamics. Nothing could have adequately prepared her for the reality. We arrived for Sunday dinner, and I watched her expression shift from polite interest to confusion, to barely concealed outrage as the meal progressed. My father interrogated her about her career, while dismissing mine. My mother made backhanded comments about how Sarah could help improve my professional prospects. Thomas dominated conversation with self-aggrandizing stories, occasionally using me as a punchline. During the drive back to our hotel, Sarah remained uncharacteristically silent. Finally, she turned to me with intensity in her eyes. What was that, Lou? They treated you like you are some kind of failure. Do they have any idea who you actually are, what you have accomplished? I pulled into the hotel parking lot and turned off the engine before responding. No, they do not, and I have worked hard to keep it that way. The whole story poured out. The years of being the family disappointment, the unexpected financial windfall, their financial troubles, and my anonymous intervention, the elaborate deception maintained over years. Sarah listened without interruption, her expression shifting between disbelief and concern. When I finished, she took my hand. This is not healthy, Lou. Not for them, and definitely not for you. You are living a lie that is costing you emotionally. But it works, I protested. Everyone gets what they need. They get financial security, and I avoid confrontation. She shook her head slowly. But what about what you deserve? Recognition, respect, authentic relationship. You cannot build your life around managing their perception. I know it seems strange, I admitted, but the truth would destroy my father. His whole identity is built around being the successful provider, the financial expert. Learning that his failure son bailed him out and has been supporting him for years would crush him. Sarah considered this. Maybe that is exactly what needs to happen. Not to crush him, but to create the possibility of an honest relationship. Her perspective challenged my carefully constructed rationalization. For years, I had convinced myself my deception was an act of kindness, sparing my parents the humiliation of accepting help from the son they had dismissed. Sarah helped me see it might also be avoidance, fear of confrontation, disguised as consideration. You need to think about our future too, she added softly. I cannot build a life with someone who is performing rather than living authentically. Sooner or later, this house of cards will collapse. Her ultimatum was gentle but clear. Either find a path toward truth with my family, or accept that our relationship had limited future. The choice seemed impossible. I had maintained this charade for so long that I struggled to imagine an alternative. That night, lying awake in our hotel room, I realized how much my identity had become entangled with secrecy and performance. The double life that had begun as a temporary solution had calcified into a defining feature of my existence. Breaking free would require courage, I was not sure I possessed. The tension between my established pattern and Sarah's ultimatum created new pressure. As our relationship deepened, the question of family authenticity became unavoidable. 6 months after her first meeting with my parents, Sarah suggested moving in together, a natural progression that nonetheless complicated my compartmentalized existence. After much discussion, we compromised. I would host Thanksgiving at my place in Boston, taking a small step toward merging my separate worlds. Of course, my actual home would reveal too much, so I arranged to borrow my friend Michael's apartment for the holiday. His place aligned with my parents' expectations, nice enough to show modest success, but not revealing my actual financial status. Preparing for their visit unleashed unexpected anxiety. I removed anything suggesting my true position, replacing Michael's family photos with generic art. I filled the refrigerator with grocery store wine, rather than my usual selections. I even created a fake work schedule, showing typical hours for a mid-level tech employee. My parents arrived with their usual mixture of criticism and condescension, barely concealed beneath polite interest. My mother inspected the apartment with the subtle scrutiny of someone confirming their low expectations. "It is cozy," she offered, which in her vocabulary meant small and unimpressive. "You have done the best you could with the space." My father nodded approvingly at the modest furniture. "Living within your means. That is sensible, at least." Their backhanded compliments continued through dinner preparation. Sarah watched this dynamic with thinly veiled frustration, occasionally squeezing my hand under the table when their comments became particularly tone-deaf. Thomas arrived last, bringing his new fiancée Jessica. Her entrance changed the entire dynamic. As she hung her designer coat, her eyes widened with recognition. "Lou, I thought you looked familiar from Michael's photos, but seeing you in person confirms it." "Did not. We meet at the Tech Forward conference in Austin. You gave that amazing keynote about predictive analytics." The room fell silent. My father looked between us with confusion. Thomas's expression shifted from dismissive to suspicious. I forced a laugh. "You must be confusing me with someone else. I have never been to Austin, and I definitely do not give keynotes." Jessica frowned. I could have sworn. She trailed off, noticing the sudden tension. "Lou fixes computers," Thomas explained condescendingly. "He is not exactly keynote material." The moment passed, but it left a residue of unease that permeated the evening. Jessica continued giving me curious glances, while my father watched our interactions with newfound attention. Only Amanda, arriving shortly after, seemed genuinely happy to see me, embracing me warmly and complimenting the apartment without subtext. During dinner, my father steered conversation toward his business achievements with familiar self-importance. "The market has been challenging, but my client portfolio has outperformed benchmarks consistently." I knew this was false. Through my management of their finances, I had complete visibility into their actual situation, which remained precarious despite my support. His phantom success stories contrasted sharply with their financial reality, creating a surreal parallel to my own deception. Mother contributed with similarly revisionist narratives. "We just renewed our country club membership. The waiting list is 2 years now, but they made an exception for us." Another fabrication. They had quietly downgraded to a social membership that limited their access to facilities. The layers of mutual deception in our family conversation struck me as tragically absurd. We were all performing versions of ourselves, maintaining fictions that had become more important than authentic connection. As dessert concluded, Thomas launched into a detailed account of his recent promotion, emphasizing his growing team and expanding responsibilities. When he finished, attention reluctantly shifted to me. "And how about you?" Lou, Mother asked with practiced politeness, "Still at the same company?" Before I could answer with my usual vague affirmation, Amanda interjected. "Actually, I looked up Vertex Technologies. They are doing amazing things in data security. Their stock has tripled in the past year." My father waved dismissively. "Lou is not involved with any of that. He is in technical support." Something in me snapped. Years of accumulated frustration crystallized in that moment. "Actually, Dad, I am Chief Strategy Officer. I lead product development and strategic partnerships." The statement hung in the air, neither fully truth nor complete lie. My actual title was Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, but the functions were similar. My father laughed uncomfortably. Now, Lou, there is no need to exaggerate. We are proud of whatever role you have. I am not exaggerating, I insisted, feeling Sarah's supportive presence beside me. Thomas smirked. So you went from IT guy to chief whatever in a few years? Sure. Jessica looked confused. That actually tracks with what I remember from the conference. You were introduced as an executive. The tension escalated as my father, sensing a challenge to the family narrative, became defensive. Lou has always had an active imagination. Remember when he thought he could start a computer repair business in high school? The conversation devolved into a heated exchange. For the first time, I openly defended my career, while my father and Thomas united to minimize my claims. Amanda watched wide-eyed, while Mother attempted to redirect conversation towards safer topics. The breaking point came when my father, frustrated by my unexpected resistance, delivered the line that would ultimately shatter our fragile equilibrium. Lou, you will always be our greatest disappointment. Some people just are not cut out for real success, and there is no shame in accepting your limitations. I nearly revealed everything then. The words formed in my throat the full truth about who had been keeping their lights on for years. Sarah gripped my arm, grounding me, and I swallowed the revelation. The moment was not right, and anger would only make the eventual truth more destructive. The evening ended awkwardly with polite but strained goodbyes. After they left, Sarah held me as 6 years of suppressed emotion poured out. The catharsis left me exhausted but clearer about the unsustainability of our family dynamic. A week later, Amanda called with disturbing news. Did you know Mom and Dad have been telling people in their neighborhood that you are struggling financially and they have been helping you out? The revelation stunned me. The layers of deception had reached new depths. Not only were they dismissing my actual success, but they were fabricating narratives about supporting me when the opposite was true. This information catalyzed my decision. After consulting with Sarah, I began preparations for the full truth to emerge. I met with my attorney to gather comprehensive documentation of all financial assistance provided over the years. We organized mortgage payments, utility bills, property tax records, and home repair expenses into clear chronological order. Simultaneously, I began emotional preparation with Dr. Reynolds, a therapist who specialized in family systems. We discussed potential reactions and developed strategies for maintaining boundaries during what would likely be a chaotic revelation. The most difficult decision was timing. A public revelation might maximize impact, but would humiliate my parents unnecessarily. A private conversation might allow them to deny or minimize the truth. After much consideration, I decided on a family gathering with just my parents, siblings, and their partners. Small enough for meaningful conversation, but with sufficient witnesses to prevent complete denial. I scheduled the meeting for my father's 65th birthday, still 6 weeks away. This would give me time for final preparations, while using an occasion my parents could not easily decline. As the date approached, my anxiety increased proportionally. Sarah reminded me daily that truth, while painful, offered the only path toward authentic relationship. Whatever happens, she said, the night before we flew to Chicago, remember that you deserve respect, and they deserve the opportunity to know their actual son, not the character you have been playing. I packed the documentation, booked the flights, and prepared myself as thoroughly as possible for the confrontation that would either destroy my family relationships or transform them into something genuine. What I could not anticipate was that the catalyst for revelation would come from an unexpected source, accelerating my timeline and changing everything in ways I could never have planned. My father's 65th birthday party was scheduled at their home, a deliberate choice that underscored their desire to project stability and prosperity despite ongoing financial challenges. Sarah and I arrived early to help with preparations, though my mother politely declined most offers of assistance, maintaining her image of domestic perfection. The house looked much as it always had, family photos, highlighting Thomas's and Amanda's achievements prominently displayed, while mine remained limited to obligatory graduation pictures. The dining room table was set with the good china crystal glasses positioned precisely at each setting. The performance of prosperity continued despite the financial realities I knew intimately. Guests began arriving at 6, a carefully curated collection of family, friends, and relatives. I recognized the social choreography from countless childhood events, my mother strategically positioning certain guests near others to facilitate her preferred conversations. Thomas and his fiancée Jessica arrived to immediate fawning attention, while Amanda slipped in quietly with her boyfriend Ryan. During a lull in greeting new arrivals, Amanda pulled me aside in the kitchen, her expression serious. "I need to talk to you," she whispered, glancing toward the living room to ensure our privacy. "I know what you have been doing." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I found papers in Dad's office a few months ago, about the trust that has been paying their mortgage. I saw the lawyer's name and made some calls pretending to be Mom. The trust leads back to you, Lou." The revelation stunned me. After years of careful concealment, my secret had been discovered by the family member I least expected to investigate. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since April. I have been trying to figure out how to talk to you about it. Why did not you tell anyone? All these years they have been treating you like a failure," I finished for her. "And meanwhile, you have been keeping them afloat," she completed. "It is incredible, Lou, and incredibly messed up." Our conversation was interrupted by my mother calling everyone to the dining room. As we joined the gathering, Amanda squeezed my arm supportively. The dynamic had shifted subtly but significantly. For the first time in our adult lives, we were true allies. Dinner progressed with predictable patterns. My father held court at the head of the table, sharing polished anecdotes that portrayed him as financially savvy and successful. The cognitive dissonance between his narrative and the reality I knew created a surreal atmosphere that only Amanda and I now recognized. After the main course, my father stood for a toast glass raised ceremoniously. "I want to thank everyone for celebrating this milestone with me." He paused, his expression becoming uncharacteristically vulnerable. "And I want to express special gratitude to the anonymous angels who have helped us through some challenging times. Margaret and I have been blessed with mysterious support that arrived precisely when needed." The room murmured with curiosity. Thomas looked confused while Jessica whispered something in his ear. Amanda caught my eye across the table, her expression conveying silent understanding. The moment might have passed unremarkably if Jessica had not suddenly straightened in her chair, her eyes widening with recognition as she stared at me. "Wait now, I remember where I know you from," she exclaimed loud enough to halt all other conversations. "You were the keynote speaker at the Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit last month. I was covering it for the financial section." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward me as Jessica continued, oblivious to the bombshell she had dropped. "You must be confused," my father interjected quickly. "Lou works in technical support at a small company." Jessica shook her head confidently. "No, I am certain." She reached for her phone. "I still have the article I wrote. There was a photo." My heart raced as she scrolled through her phone. This was not how I had planned the revelation, but perhaps the universe had its own timeline. "Here," she announced triumphantly, holding up her screen. The photo showed me in a tailored suit, standing before the Vertex Technologies logo, captioned "Lou Anderson, Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at Vertex Technologies, discusses emerging security paradigms." My mother gasped audibly. Thomas's mouth opened and closed without words. My father's face flushed deep red as he stared at the image, then at me, comprehension and confusion battling across his features. "There must be some mistake," he insisted weakly. Sarah took my hand under the table as I took a deep breath. "There is no mistake, Dad. That is me, and that is my actual position." "But that is impossible," my mother interjected. "You fix computers." "I have not fixed a computer professionally in 6 years," I replied calmly. "I help lead a company with over 500 employees, and annual revenue exceeding $200 million. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Thomas. "Why would you lie about this?" he demanded, his tone suggesting I had somehow wronged them by succeeding. "I did not lie," I clarified. "I just did not correct your assumptions. There is more to the story, though. Much more." Amanda nodded encouragingly. "Tell them, Lou." With all eyes on me, I explained how my early position at TechNexus had evolved, how the company acquisition had transformed my financial situation, and finally, how I had discovered their financial troubles and established the trust that had been supporting them for 6 years. As I spoke, I removed the folder of documentation from my briefcase and placed it on the table. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, the roof replacement, the property taxes, all paid through the trust I had established and maintained. My father reached for the folder with trembling hands, opening it to reveal the first page of bank statements clearly showing the payment source. His face paled as he flipped through document after document, the evidence of my long-term support undeniable. "This is impossible," he whispered. "I assure you it is not," I replied gently. "I have been helping you for 6 years, while you continued to call me a failure to my face." The accusation hung heavy in the air. My mother began to cry quietly, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. Thomas stared at the documents, his expression shifting between disbelief and what appeared to be resentment. "Why would you do this? Why not just tell us?" my father demanded, anger emerging as his default defense. Before I could answer, Sarah spoke up. "Lou was protecting your dignity. He knew how important your image was to you. You had no right to deceive us like this," my father countered, his voice rising, "to manipulate our lives from the shadows." The irony of his accusation was not lost on anyone present. Amanda laughed without humor. "Seriously, Dad, you have spent years belittling Lou while secretly living on his support, and you are accusing him of manipulation." Her unexpected defense silenced him momentarily. The dinner guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly recognizing they had become witnesses to an intensely private family reckoning. My mother stood suddenly. "I think we should continue this discussion in private. To our friends, I apologize for the disruption." As the guests made awkward exits, murmuring congratulations that now seemed hollow, my father retreated to his study without another word. My mother followed after ensuring all guests had departed, leaving Thomas, Amanda, their partners, Sarah, and me in the dining room, surrounded by the aftermath of revelation. Thomas broke the silence. "So all this time, while we thought you were struggling, you were actually wildly successful," Amanda finished. "And instead of throwing it in our faces, he quietly helped when Mom and Dad were in trouble." Thomas's expression was complex, mixing resentment with grudging respect. "Why keep it secret? Were you planning some kind of dramatic revelation to humiliate us?" The question revealed more about Thomas's thinking than he perhaps intended. It projected onto me the approach he might have taken in my position. "I never planned to reveal it," I admitted. "The arrangement was working. You all got to maintain your narrative about me, and I got to ensure my parents did not lose their home." "That is messed up," Lou Thomas said, but his tone had softened. "This whole family is messed up." For the first time in our adult lives, Thomas and I found something to agree on completely. The shared recognition prompted unexpected laughter that released some of the tension. My parents did not rejoin us that evening. After an hour of processing with my siblings, Sarah and I returned to our hotel. The confrontation had not followed my carefully planned script, but perhaps Jessica's inadvertent revelation had provided a cleaner break than my orchestrated approach would have. That night, lying awake beside Sarah, I experienced conflicting emotions. Relief that the truth was finally known. Concern about my parents' reaction. Uncertainty about what would follow. Most surprisingly, a profound sense of liberation. After years of performance and constraint, I had been seen by my family for who I actually was, for better or worse. "They will need time," Sarah murmured, sensing my wakefulness. "I know," I replied. 6 years of deception on both sides. That does not heal overnight. "But it can heal," she assured me. "Truth creates that possibility." As dawn broke over Chicago, I realized we had crossed a threshold. Whether my parents could accept this new reality remained uncertain, but the elaborate fiction that had defined our relationship for years had finally ended. Whatever came next would at least be authentic. The days following my father's birthday party unfolded in uncomfortable silence. Neither of my parents contacted me, though. Amanda provided regular updates on their emotional state. According to her, they alternated between shock, anger, and profound embarrassment. My father had retreated to emotional isolation, while my mother cycled through crying spells and periods of frantic cleaning. Sarah and I extended our Chicago stay, moving from the hotel to a rented apartment to remain available when they were ready to talk. The waiting period became an unexpected opportunity for deeper connections with my siblings. Thomas initially maintained distance, processing his own complicated feelings about my success and our family dynamic. Amanda, however, embraced our new honesty completely. On our third evening after the revelation, Amanda invited us to dinner at her apartment. As we shared pizza and wine, she offered insights that had been years in formation. "I always knew something was off about how they treated you," she admitted. "But I was too young to understand it, and then it just became our normal." "I never blamed you," I assured her. "You were a kid caught in a dysfunctional system." She nodded thoughtfully. "Still, I wish I had defended you more, especially once I was old enough to see what was happening." This honest conversation represented exactly what I had been missing in my family relationships: the authentic exchange of perspectives, without performance or pretense. Later that week, Thomas finally reached out suggesting coffee at a neutral location. Our meeting began awkwardly, neither of us quite knowing how to navigate our new reality. After several minutes of small talk, Thomas addressed the situation directly. "I have been thinking about all the times I participated in putting you down," he said, studying his coffee cup. "I convinced myself it was just normal brother stuff, but looking back, it was cruel." His acknowledgement surprised me. I had expected defensiveness or continued competition, not this humble reflection. "We were all playing roles assigned to us," I offered. "The golden child, the scapegoat, the peacemaker. Classic family dynamics." He smiled ruefully. "I played my part well, did not I? The successful son following exactly the path they valued. Too well, maybe I suggested. Did you ever consider alternatives?" His expression revealed a vulnerability I had never witnessed in my confident older brother. "All the time. I hate investment banking, Lou. I am good at it, but it drains my soul daily." This confession created a new bridge between us. For the first time, we spoke as adults, sharing genuine experiences rather than competitors in our parents' approval tournament. By the end of our conversation, something fundamental had shifted. The rivalry had dissolved into potential friendship. A week after the revelation, my mother finally called. Her voice sounded small and uncertain, entirely unlike her usual confident tone. "Lou, I do not know where to begin," she said after a long pause. "The things we said to you over the years, while you were secretly keeping us afloat." Her voice broke. "I am so ashamed." Her vulnerability pierced my practiced emotional distance. "Mom, I never wanted to humiliate you or Dad. That is why I kept it secret." "But why help us at all?" she asked. "After how we treated you, you would have been justified in letting us face the consequences." The question made me examine my own motivations more deeply. "Because you are my parents," I answered simply. "And because I thought someday we might have a real relationship, not one based on false narratives about who I am." She began crying softly. "I would like that very much. A real relationship." We agreed to meet for lunch the following day, a first step toward whatever new dynamic might be possible. Our conversation was tentative, but marked by unprecedented honesty. She shared her own insecurities that had driven her behavior, how her identity had become entangled with projecting family perfection to their social circle. "I was so focused on how others saw us that I failed to see you," she admitted. "Really see you." My father proved more resistant to reconciliation. 2 weeks passed before he agreed to meet, and even then he chose his attorney's office as the location, suggesting he viewed our relationship through an adversarial lens. When I arrived, I found him alone, his lawyer conspicuously absent. "I asked Harold to give us privacy," he explained, gesturing to a chair across from him. "This is between us." His face showed the strain of recent weeks, new lines etched around his eyes and mouth. For several minutes, we sat in uncomfortable silence, until he finally spoke. "All my life, I have prided myself on being the provider, the expert, the one who knows best." He began, his voice rough with emotion. To discover that my son, whom I had dismissed and criticized, was actually supporting me. He shook his head slowly. "The humiliation is almost unbearable." "I was not trying to humiliate you, Dad." "I know that now," he acknowledged. "Which makes it worse in some ways. Your kindness highlights my failure both financially and as a father." For the first time, I saw my father not as the towering figure of my childhood, but as a flawed man, struggling with his own insecurities and limitations. This perspective shifted something fundamental in me, transforming lingering resentment into unexpected compassion. We all failed each other, I offered. We created a family system where performance mattered more than authenticity, where keeping up appearances trumped genuine connection. He nodded slowly, his eyes revealing painful recognition. I do not know how to be different, Lou. This has been my operating system for 65 years. We start small, I suggested, with honesty about where we are now and what we actually want from each other going forward. What I want, he said after a thoughtful pause, is to know my actual son, not the character I invented to fit my narrative. His honesty opened space for my own. What I want is to be seen for who I am, not measured against some impossible standard, or dismissed because my success looks different from what you imagined. This conversation marked the beginning of a difficult but transformative process. Over the following months, we engaged in regular family therapy sessions with Dr. Ramirez, a specialist in family systems. These structured conversations provided safe space to examine long-established patterns and begin creating healthier alternatives. I maintained financial support for my parents, but with complete transparency. We established clear boundaries and expectations, removing the distorting influence of secrecy. My father struggled most with this arrangement, his pride battling with practical necessity, but gradually he accepted this new reality with increasing grace. Planning my wedding to Sarah accelerated our healing process by providing a shared positive focus. My mother channeled her organizational skills into helping with arrangements, while my father surprised me by seeking my input on managing his remaining investments, a profound acknowledgement of my financial acumen. 6 months after the revelation, we gathered for our first holiday without pretense. The difference was palpable. Conversation flowed more naturally. Genuine interests were shared, rather than performances staged, and laughter emerged spontaneously, rather than at anyone's expense. Thomas spoke openly about considering a career change. Amanda shared both successes and struggles in her art career, and I discussed my professional challenges without minimizing my achievements. Most significantly, my father asked for my business advice, publicly acknowledging my expertise in front of extended family. This simple act of respect meant more than any grand gesture could have. Living authentically brought unexpected freedom. Released from the exhausting maintenance of separate identities, I found new energy for both professional innovation and personal relationships. Sarah and I purchased a home outside Boston with guest rooms specifically designed for family visits. My parents' first stay there represented another milestone in our evolving relationship. As my father and I sat on the back deck watching the sunset during that visit, he broached a subject we had carefully avoided. I need to understand something, Lou. All those years when we belittled your choices and questioned your abilities, how did you not become bitter? How did you find the generosity to help us when we had shown you so little support? The question deserved careful consideration. For much of my adult life, I had been motivated by a complex mixture of love, obligation, rebellion, and hope. Distilling this into a simple answer seemed impossible. I did feel bitter sometimes, I admitted, but I also recognized that your treatment of me reflected your limitations, not mine. Breaking destructive family patterns requires someone to make different choices. He nodded slowly, absorbing this perspective. You are a better man than I was at your age. Probably a better man than I am now. We are just different, Dad. Neither better nor worse, just shaped by different experiences and choices. As twilight deepened around us, I recognized the profound gift in this moment of authentic connection. The path to this point had been complicated and painful, but sitting beside my father, as equals sharing honest conversation without performance or pretense, made the journey worthwhile. Building my own family with Sarah now proceeded from solid foundation. We approached marriage with clear communication and mutual respect, determined to create patterns that would not require future unraveling. The lessons from my family of origin informed my choices without defining them, allowing me to carry forward what was valuable while consciously creating healthier alternatives. The most significant insight from this complex journey was surprisingly simple. True success has little to do with external metrics and everything to do with authentic living. Financial achievement means little without the freedom to be known for who you actually are. Family relationships cannot thrive when built on performance rather than acceptance. 6 years of deception had been necessary because of the family system we had collectively created and maintained. The revelation, though painful, created possibility for genuine connection that secrecy could never provide. While our relationships remained works in progress, they now existed in reality rather than carefully constructed fiction. What would you do if someone in your family has consistently underestimated or dismissed your potential? Have you ever maintained a facade to keep peace, or have you found the courage to live authentically despite others' expectations? Share your experience in the comments below. This journey taught me that truth, while sometimes painful, is ultimately the only path to meaningful connection. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that living authentically is always worth the risk. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth is never determined by others' limited perception of you.